is, I think it's a little after 8:30, so we will go ahead and call to order the meeting of the Legislative and Human Resources Committee of the Kent County Board of Commissioners. And since some of our members are still attending virtually, I'll go ahead and ask that they take a roll.
Good morning, Chair Stack. Burrow.
Here.
Hennessy. Here. Coleman. Coleman. LeGrand.
Here.
McLeod.
Here.
Could you state your location?
Kentwood.
Ponstein.
Wood, Michigan.
Skaggs.
Here.
And Teal.
Here.
Chair Stack, you have a quorum.
Thank you much. I will indicate that Commissioner Coleman did indicate to me that he would be virtual, so he may either have not been off mute or he may still be tying in. So let's go to our first item of business, which is public comment. If there is anyone here from the public that wishes to address the committee, please identify yourself, and you have 3 minutes. I don't see anyone in the chambers. Is there anyone online? All right. With that, we will then move to the next item of business, which is approval of the minutes from June 8 of 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So
Moved. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, supported. Discussion? Not. Those that support say yes.
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 Opposed? No. It is approved. All right, let's move to our legislative update. I believe that we have Steve Carey online. Maybe is Charlie there as well? I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, great. Welcome. Good morning. Go ahead and turn it over to you for an update, legislative update.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and it's good to be with everybody today. I'm on travel, so my apologies, and I will rely more heavily on Charlie, who has the material in front of him. I'm not sure if you have a PowerPoint in front of you. We sent it a little bit late last night, so probably too late for you to see it. But let me just proceed, and Charlie, weigh in if you can. Our report is going to be similar to the report that we gave you last year when it came to COVID relief. You will recall that when we would report to you on progress for COVID relief or other spending, regulatory, and so forth policies, that within a day or two, that would change. Our numbers would change, the progress would change. That is where we find ourselves on the infrastructure bill. Since we last talked, there have been probably a dozen iterations of the infrastructure bill, different numbers, and support from the left, the right, the moderates, and that has all changed. Now, where we find ourselves today is a version that is not workforce focused, for example, with healthcare, water infrastructure, solar, and so forth, but rather the traditional infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways. There was a bipartisan Senate deal that was crafted a couple of weeks ago, and only for it to be halted by some of the progressives on the House side to demand increases in other unrelated figures and policies. Today we wake up to another deal. I believe it's $1.2 trillion over 8 years with spending for power grid infrastructure and so forth, the traditional kinds of infrastructure that we're all used to. There are some sticking points for sure. The pay-fors, I will say that even Democrats are expecting pay-fors, unlike where they were previously. They thought that if they could just get this infrastructure bill, it would pay for itself by employing and so forth. But right now, Joe Manchin from West Virginia, Senator Sinema from Arizona and Bernie Sanders are expecting pay-fors from a variety of different methods. With that, let me turn it over to my colleague, Charlie, to elaborate.
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to mention, Steve gave you a little bit of the outline, and I'll give you a few top-line numbers for this framework. And it is still just a framework. The details are not available in terms of, how much will be spent. It's just really a list of top-line numbers. And one important number is 579 billion in new spending. And in the out years, it would get to over 1 trillion in spending. But a major chunk of that is for transportation. And of that, about 110 billion would be for roads, bridges, and other projects. You'd have 66 billion for passenger and freight rail, 48 billion for public transit, 20 billion for airports, and on the other issue, there are other very important infrastructure elements to this, including the power grid. There's 73 billion for that, 65 billion for broadband, 55 billion for water infrastructure, and 47 billion for climate resiliency, they call it, and some more funding for other areas. So that is your pretty much a typical infrastructure bill. And as Steve mentioned, there are several hurdles to pay for that. The most important hurdles is how to pay for it. One of the ways they were proposing to pay for it would be through raising or indexing the gas tax for inflation and imposing fees on electric vehicles. Those are two areas that are off the table now. That's meeting with a lot of opposition from the White House. So the issue of pay-fors, how it's going to be paid for, is still very much in flux. We could get a deal later today from some reports that we're reading. We could get a deal, but there are many other hurdles to passing just the bipartisan infrastructure bill, not including the major spending that the White House and progressives in Congress want to spend, which could add up to as much as $6 trillion. So with that, Steve, are there any other questions as we move forward? Because I know there are a lot of things in play right now as we head into the week.
There are a lot of other things in play right now. For example, the fiscal year 22 budget and appropriations process is proceeding, and other legislation is moving forward. But perhaps, Chairman, if you think we should hit pause and see if there are any questions about that, or would you like us to continue?
Why don't you go ahead and finish, and then we'll open it up for questions across the board.
Very good. Well, as everyone knows, the president submitted his fiscal year 22 budget. It was a bit late. That's partially because of the new administration. He has to put in his own OMB officials to make sure that the budget is in line with this administration's philosophy. As we speak, certain subcommittees are finishing up their drafts on the House side, financial services appropriations, and a few others. It is the House Appropriations Chair, Rosa DeLauro's plan to have these bills marked up or passed by their various subcommittees and full committee by the end of July. The Senate does not have a timeline, but I know that they would like to have as much done by August. Now, it's important for everybody to know that if the House and Senate pass these bigger bills, whether it's infrastructure, healthcare programs, and so forth, in a budget reconciliation process, which is typically just one side, and in this case the majority, passing it without the support of the other side, then that could throw the fiscal year 22 appropriations into a bit of a challenge. What I mean by that is typically there are 12 appropriations subcommittees that mark up their bills separately, and they are each passed into law. For example, Veterans Affairs and Military Construction, then the Defense Bill, Energy and Water, Agriculture, Transportation, Housing, Urban Development, and on and on and on. If, however, they don't come to an agreement, there is the threat that Congress would pass a year-long continuing resolution, which would essentially keep funding for fiscal year 22 at current fiscal year 21 appropriations levels. The reason that's a challenge is that there are defense needs, obviously. There are CDC, Centers for Disease Control, funding needs, NIH, et cetera, transportation needs that need to go up. So if that threat is realized, it could destabilize a number of different programs. Charlie, did I miss anything on that front?
No, in fact, there is so much going on right now. I wanted to add that Congress still wants, President Biden has assured the progressive wing of his party that he can go big on all of these spending bills, including his American Family Plan, which includes Medicaid expansion, education, unemployment, childcare, paid family leave, healthcare, and so forth, as well as infrastructure plan. So that's being thrown into the mix too. That would be part of that budget reconciliation plan. That is something that a lot of progressives and within his own party want him to push as far as the budget reconciliation process, where it is not subject to the filibuster and they only need 50 votes in the Senate to get it passed. The big question is whether it's Senators Sinema and Manchin and centrist senators within the Democratic Party will go along with that plan.
Okay, anything more, or should we open it up for questions? Steve and Charlie?
There's just one other thing that might be of importance, of interest to you, Chairman, and the attendees, is that police reform is still alive despite what we've read. Again, it's on again, off again, but there are behind-the-scenes discussions between Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. He's carrying the ball for the Republican side, and then Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat from New Jersey. Their goal is to have something certainly by the 4th of July. Their initial deadline of earlier this year has come and gone, but it's a very fluid situation. Just wanted to let you know that that's still in the works. And with that, yes, please, happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for your reports. Let's open it up to questions. Any commissioners have questions or comments? Either online or in person? So much they're just starstruck here, guys.
It's okay. It's a lot of numbers for sure, and whatever we report today is bound to change within a few hours. And we are always happy to answer questions if anybody wants to call us.
That's why we keep having you come back, because everything changes. So while there may be other questions percolating, can you just address, I know that you described in the current discussions on the infrastructure bill, infrastructure projects such as water and broadband, which are also identified as funding targets for the American Rescue Plan funds. Is there currently redundancy in those, or are those intended to focus on different components of those issues?
That's a great question. It is not to be redundant. And first of all, they are looking at the big picture. They're trying to figure out what the number is, the big overall number. And from there, once they agree to a number, and these numbers are also based on needs, based on discussions that they have with their agency officials, governors, and local officials too, they get to where they can agree on that top line. Once those top lines are in place, they will then caucus with, if you will, with those agency officials to ensure there is not redundancy. For example, there are programs that already exist for various water projects and current formulas for roads and bridges. That will not be in addition to, but those formulas will change based on population, based on miles paved, based on need for paving, etc. So there will not be redundancy.
And then,
There's nothing more frustrating. Please, yes, sir, go ahead.
no, I was just wondering if there's a sense already as to, of course, with the American Rescue Plans, those funds are distributed directly to local public entities. Is the funding mechanism intended to be state-directed?
There are a few different methods that would be state and directly to the local. In fact, you raise another good point that we should have discussed earlier or reported earlier, that the idea was floated by the administration to pay for the infrastructure bill partially through the emergency COVID funding that the state and local, especially local entities received. They referred to that as a clawback. That was quickly pounced upon, and they didn't float that idea anymore. Charlie, do you have anything to add on the chairman's question?
Yeah, and I think that really comes down to the debate is how to pay for these infrastructure plans. Steve mentioned the idea of using unused COVID relief funds. Earlier we mentioned fees on electric vehicles and indexing the gas tax to inflation. Some of the other proposals out there to raise revenue to pay for this would be through public-private partnerships. Another thing that Senator Bernie Sanders does not support, you're talking about private activity bonds, direct pay municipal bonds, a lot of other mechanisms, asset recycling, and these are all still very much up in the air about how they want to pay for these plans. President Biden's plan is much more ambitious. Of course, the American Jobs Plan is his infrastructure plan. That would be $2.3 trillion, and that would be paid for by raising taxes on people making over $400,000 and on raising the corporate tax and other means. So they're still at loggerheads on that. They also have a number of recesses coming up. You've got July 4th recess and you've got the August recess. So they're going to have to fit all this legislation in a very narrow window or time frame where they have the opportunity to move on this. And another thing they have to deal with is the debt limit debate on whether to pass a bill to allow the debt limit to increase. That's another debate that will take up a lot of their time this summer.
Good, thank you. Any questions, any other questions or comments from members? All right, so I don't see any, so I'm going to seize the opportunity to do another one. Our CMH, Community Mental Health System in Kent County, is identified as a CCBHC, and I know that there's some pending legislation in Washington to further amend or modify that. Are you aware of that and what the status of that may be?
No, and thank you for raising it with me, because I feel that's something that I'm usually on top of. I will definitely look into it, but if you have anything else that you could send me, I'd appreciate it, and I'm happy to review it, investigate, and report back.
Okay, Yeah, maybe we can follow up then afterwards, but I know that it was pending.
Please do.
So, all right, any other questions, comments? If not, thank you both for your report and update. And in these times, with everything changing and so much going on, it's probably likely we'll have you back here in the near future again.
We're happy to do it. I'm very proud to represent you all, and thank you for all that you do. You're on the front lines. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move to item number 4, which is a performance measurement review from the 63rd District Court. We have Matt Mapes here with us this morning.
Morning.
Good morning. It's so nice to have these reports live again.
Amen. Except Angie's probably upset she can't mute me.
Oh, I've got the button, don't worry.
Morning, everybody. I'm Matt Mapes. I'm the Deputy Administrator at the 63rd District Court. This is Danielle Castillo. She's our new administrator, new court administrator. This is day 12 for her. So with that, I'm going to be sitting down. She'll be taking over. Kidding. I'll be standing in for her today. Danielle's going to introduce herself in a few minutes, and we'll kind of hopefully get to know everybody. But I do appreciate your time today. Kind of roll through our presentation. So I want to start with just a word of thanks. A thank you to everybody on this commission. A thank you to the county. A thank you to Wayman's team, Linda's team, IT, the Sheriff's Department, and on down the list. We don't get through the last year without the support of your partnership, your help. And that really needs to be lauded, and that really needs to be talked about. The things that have been done, the things we've been able to get through, fight through, continue to accomplish our mission during that period of time, doesn't happen. I appreciate that. Danielle, the judges, the entire court staff appreciate that. Judge O'Hara and Judge Smolinski both unable to be here today. They both have busy civil dockets. Tuesday is a busy landlord-tenant day at the court, and as you can imagine, there's a fair amount going on with landlord-tenant these days. So we're making sure we're working through those and getting those in the regards, and unfortunately, 63rd District Court is one of 5 district courts here in Kent County. We're the only county-funded court. We cover essentially the entirety of Kent County minus some of our major cities here, Wyoming, Walker, Granville, Kentwood, and the city of Grand Rapids. So, trial court of limited jurisdiction has exclusive jurisdiction over the following case types: civil suits, $25,000 or less, adult criminal misdemeanor offenses punishable by up to 1 year imprisonment, civil infractions, traffic violations, landlord-tenant disputes, small claims, which is $6,000 or less, and land contract forfeitures. So that's the 63rd District Court. As for today, you guys have probably been through a handful of these before. I try to follow the same format. We'll try to be quick and be efficient. Please stop me at any time if you have any questions. This is essentially our roadmap for today, and we'll work through the information the best we can. All right, so let's look at strategic alignment. The court takes its role as a really foundation of society, foundation of functional society, democratic society, very, very essentially. Very important to us, and we want to make sure we continue to accomplish our mission. In order for that to happen, we have to be trusted. So all of these priorities, all these strategic priorities are the same priorities that we have. We want to support economic prosperity. We want to support a high quality of life, excellence in service delivery, inclusive participation. We make decisions organizationally, docket-wise, how we schedule things, how we allow people to appear, not only to be trusted, to make sure we're also supporting these same priorities. Our mission statement is up next in our department strategic goals. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, but I do want to comment on a few highlights. We are committed to the prompt, courteous, and fair dispensation of justice. Prompt, courteous, and fair. Again, we need to be trusted. Those are the pillars of being trusted. We also want to make sure we're being responsible stewards of public funds. We don't do anything wasteful. We don't waste money. I've been asking for a helicopter landing pad for years. It hasn't happened. All right? So we try to be very, very responsible steward of our funds. Again, we continue to appreciate it. Most of our goals here, goal 1 through 5, are tied to time guidelines. The court reports back time guidelines quarterly in some respects or annually back to the State Court Administrator's Office. We want to make sure that we always fall within those time guidelines, again, to make sure people are getting timely justice. As we're going to see and talk about in numbers here, the biggest time guideline that's taken a hit, the only thing we've been able to accomplish, really, are general civil jury trials, because we haven't been able to safely bring a jury in, or criminal trials that require a jury. We're going to talk about what those numbers look like in that big scary word, backlog. We're going to talk about backlog in a few minutes, but essentially we'll talk through those as we get there. So again, our goal is to continue to accomplish these goals, do so by keeping people safe, keeping the community safe, keeping our employees safe, keeping our employees' families safe. If you look at any data in the data packets supplied to you, really data around the state of Michigan, 2019 caseload numbers, case efficiency numbers, time guidelines, we're humming along. We're flying high, we're feeling good. 2020 hits, like everybody else, it all falls. Case numbers go down, the ability to adjudicate cases goes down, 2020 hits. We are now in 2021 is kind of our recovery. So numbers are starting to bounce back to where they were before, and that includes the amount of people, the amount of cases being adjudicated, the amount of new filings, all those types of things. So we're in that recovery phase right now. We really expect to remain in that recovery phase throughout the rest of the year, and hopefully hit 2022, running smoothly and kind of back to normal. If we like to say, I think I said we're going to be back to normal. I don't know how many times over the last year, but hoping to get back to normal by 2022. All right, so the key performance metrics that I want to talk about here is in our probation division. So we have a goal here that 70% of all probationers discharged each year will be successful. So successful discharge from probation means not only did they follow through with all the components of their probation conditions, but they were fully engaged. If you think about the stresses of the last year, that hits a population like those that may be dealing with substance abuse or other instability in their lives especially hard, right? So we were able to really better help those people through innovation. We were better to connect with people through innovation. We're having, how many Zoom hearings have you guys been to or Zoom meetings have you been to in the last year? We're able to implement the same thing to communicate with our probationers. Within a couple days of the pandemic hitting, we have Google Voice accounts set up for everybody, and we're texting and having phone calls with everybody from home. So our probation officers were really able to stay connected. We're able to innovatively stay connected during that period of time to make sure they got that support, in a lot of cases, more support than they expected. Now, probation caseloads fell slightly. Typically, our probation case numbers are about 200 cases of probation officer or so, give or take. Those fell to about 150 during that period of time. You're able to reinvest that 25%, reinvest that in people that need it, and reinvest that in people that really, again, need that additional support to make sure that those are successful. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have a few laughs at the same time. I'm sure if you Google Zoom issues or anything, you'll see some of those things come up. When you're talking to somebody on a probation call or something like that, and one of their conditions of probation is they can't drive, and they're in a moving car driving while they're talking to you on Zoom, that's something you have to clean up and address. But for the most part, we were more available, I would say, to a lot of people than we were in the past. They don't have to leave work to come in and see their probation officer. They can do it from the break room, do it from their parked car. They can do it in some cases right in their office. So again, more availability for people led to better outcomes. 2020 was also really a booming year for Judge O'Hara runs an intensive probation program or an enhanced probation program. And really what that is it's increased frequency. It's increased frequency and increased face time with him in the courtroom. It's increased time with other probation officers. It takes time, it takes care, but it's also successful. Again, building people up, giving people success, and ultimately leading to better outcomes. I was at a call. Judge O'Hara had a successful discharge hearing with somebody just a couple weeks ago. They had an alcohol problem going on 10 years. They had been a year sober. So, a year of a round of applause and big support, and I'd like to say that a lot of that attributed to the support he got as part of that intensive probation program. All right, let's talk about the scary word. The scary word here is backlog. The good news is the 63rd District Court, through innovation, through creativity, has been able to avoid much of the backlog that some other larger, the circuit court and things like that, is dealing with. We have approximately 150 cases per judge right now that are awaiting trial. The good news is the majority of those cases will not actually need a trial to be concluded. If you look at the jury statistics, you'll see that we're only holding somewhere between 23, 25, 30 cases a year. We have approximately 45 to 50 trial dates throughout the year when we hopefully reopen for trials here in a couple weeks. And then we can go, look at how to fit those in. We have support from visiting judges. We have support from the prosecutor. We have support from the Office of the Defender and private attorneys to make sure we can get these pending cases resolved. And again, hope to be back to level by 2022. Significant accomplishments, I want to start with, again, COVID-19 response. And I mentioned it off the top, thank you for your support. We had to be innovative. There's something about change where sometimes the best change is that which can be forced upon you. And I like to say we came out the other side smarter. We have a saying around the 63rd is, we're not going back to 2019. We're not going to do things the same way we did in 2019. We're going to learn from this. We're going to use what we can as an opportunity to improve. We also have the eviction diversion program. The eviction diversion program really collaborates, is the district court collaborating with Salvation Army and MDHHS to make sure people can stay in their house, in their home, and really allow people to get support. It creates additional hearings. It takes additional steps to get those results taken care of. But ultimately, it was something that needed to be done for a positive community impact. And last but not least, again, is that ongoing improvement. We intend to continue to improve. As Danielle will probably tell you, we want to be an elite organization. We want to be an elite court in the state of Michigan. We want to be the model. We want to be the one people talk about and look at and go, man, I really like how the 63rd is doing. The one that they pick up the phone and they call, hey, how are you guys doing things? So we want to make sure that we fit that model and continue to fit that model going forward. Look ahead, we were able to use some COVID dollars and COVID monies to update our audio and video technology in all of our courtrooms. So the good news is we can, again, offer new and unique ways for people to connect with the court. We also can have better records. You now have video records instead of just audio records of every court hearing, and that can be important for a lot of different things. Again, making sure people have a fair representation of what happened. We have also just applied for a specialty court planning grant. We submitted that just a couple weeks back. We have not heard back. The due date is the end of June. But really, based on the success of Judge O'Hara's intensive probation program, he's looking at opening a hybrid drug sobriety court. And again, hoping to talk about that. That's a 2022 project. And again, I just want to close with, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you again all for your time. I'm going to turn to Danielle here for just a second and take some questions. But I also want to say a quick thank you to Wayman, and congratulations, sir. Enjoy you on the next step. Hopefully it's, on the golf course or something like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
I'll turn to Danielle for just a second, and then we'll take questions.
I don't know if you guys are going to want me back. He did such a great job. My name is Danielle. I was recently hired as a 63rd District Court Administrator. Spent 10 years at the 17th Circuit Court, mainly at the Kent County Correctional Facility. A lot of diverse populations and other things that have arisen throughout the 10 years that I've worked with specialty courts and with. I look forward to working closely with all of you, and thank you for allowing us to come and talk to you about how we are looking to.
All right, well, welcome. So questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. One was, could you just explain the visiting judges? Will you be bringing extra judges in to help work through the cases that you?
We have the capacity. Every year we have the capacity to bring in visiting judges. And typically they're used to cover things like judicial absences. So the judges have to go to an educational opportunity. We'll bring them in to cover some cases. So what we have the ability to do is bring those visiting judges in potentially to handle the normal, regular criminal docket. And then we could redeploy our judges to handle jury trials if need be. So we don't expect the visiting judges to actually be resolving jury trials. They would kind of take the regular docket so that Judge Splitsky and Judge O'Hara can take the jury trials if needed. But really, we don't anticipate that being needed based on just simply the breadth of trial dates we're going to have between, we hope to start jury trials in August, between August and the end of the year.
Okay, and then I have another question.
Excuse me, can you get a little closer to the mic?
Oh,
Just,
sorry.
thank you.
I wondered, is there any thought to extending, if the Zoom probation meetings have been as successful as you say, is there any thought that could we legally carry that forward and as a way to support our probationers and make it kind of easier for them to succeed?
Absolutely. We have a lot of faith and a lot of trust in our probation officers and how they build their relationships and rapport with those probation officers. So not only in those probation meetings, absolutely, we'll continue to have Zoom meetings as well as, access to people in different ways. But also, I would say there are court hearings that will never go back to being heard in person. And we don't have a lot of data. We're still gathering data to support it. But something like a traffic hearing, You know, the amount of time, energy it takes to have a police officer, a sheriff's department officer come in, overtime, sit in the courtroom for a 10-minute hearing, and have that person take time off work. I think there's a lot of things that continue to be via Zoom. As of right now, Judge O'Hara and Judge Smolinski are looking to return most criminal hearings to in-person hearings in mid-July. But all civil hearings, for the most part, remain via Zoom. And our magistrate courtroom, which handles, 40 hours a week of docket, will be via Zoom as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if you could comment a little bit more on what you mentioned there at the end about Judge O'Hara's plans for the hybrid sobriety and drug court.
Well, so we're simply starting to look at laying some groundwork, essentially. So starting with a planning grant, look at what it would take, what it would, what kind of foundation we would need, starting to build a roadmap a little bit, and then seeing ultimately what we could do from there. We have a lot of good models around us that we could look at for support. 17th has got a great one. The 62B out at Kentwood has got a great one. So we're just kind of exploring things at this point in terms of a plan.
The mic, a little bit.
Sorry,
We're a slave to the mic.
I'm sorry. You want me to say that all again? Okay.
There, all right.
So I'm sorry about that. What I was saying was that the whole idea behind Recovery Court is to deal with the internal issues that lead defendants to criminality, including substance abuse, mental health, poverty. And we want to connect our community to those resources so they can fix internally what is broken and try to make a better life for themselves and come out feeling connected and not maybe rigid about the system. We're trying to improve relationships as our, with our local police departments and other community agencies, but also with the community. And like Matt stressed in the PowerPoint, we want to build that trust and make sure people have confidence in the job that we're doing.
Commissioner Hennessy?
I've appreciated hearing your report this morning, and it rounds things out and adds some personal elements to your report. I also looked, as I tend to do, I looked at your Access Kent presence and, found it interesting. What I was dismayed about was to receive your report in the mail, the report that goes as part of the agenda, and to find under your 5 goals the same statement over and over again. The court has adopted multiple new and enhanced procedures to continue operations during the pandemic, including remote hearings using video conferencing, virtual meetings, and virtual work platforms. This has enabled the court to hear cases and serve the public without a break in service. 5 times over. And I would like to receive performance reports that are meaningful for me to review before I hear from you. You are the only court that is funded by the county. And I was actually mad. I was not just dismayed, I was actually mad as I sat down to look at the materials and to think, this is all I get?
I guess I'll say I'm sorry to hear that. We'll work on cleaning it up and make sure it improves for the next round.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I do have a couple if you can follow up. First of all, with your specialty court planning, at the 17th, we do have a mental health court, a behavioral health court. We don't yet at the district court. Is that in some stage of planning? And if so, great. If not, how can we move that conversation along?
Well, so right now, we're simply, again, applying for grants and starting to roadmap what that would look like. We're really at the infancy of that process. I would say as soon as we understand kind of what the grant funding looks like, it will be a time to have further conversation from there. Right now, it's just really so new in the process, I feel a little silly talking about next steps.
Because that kind of court would facilitate what you've talked about as your long-term objectives, to be able to identify those individuals that are better served through other mechanisms than the criminal justice system. So encourage you to do that. We're certainly interested in seeing that process. The other question I have is, so I believe during the pandemic, the landlord-tenant trials probably weren't going on. Is that part of your backlog, and should we anticipate a significant number of eviction hearings coming up as you get back into trials?
Well, the good news is we do not have a large backlog of landlord-tenant cases awaiting. What we don't know is as of today, the eviction moratorium is set to end the end of June. So we don't know what that looks like in terms of next steps. We're awaiting some next steps and information from Scale and State Court Administrator's Office in terms of kind of what the options will be at that point. Right now, essentially what the process is adding in additional hearings to make sure that people have an opportunity to understand their rights and also are connected to resources, which is oftentimes funding resources and assistance resources. At this point, it's a little bit wait and see, even at this point, because we don't know what the final impact of that eviction moratorium lift will be and what the support from Scale will be, or direction from Scale.
Are you working with, for KCCA, for example, is implementing on the Salvation Army, implementing the eviction avoidance and have the funds to do that? So it just strikes me that the best point of contact is if there's an eviction hearing, that's when that information needs to get to the defendant for purposes of knowing there are other alternatives.
Absolutely. For every landlord-tenant or summary proceedings case that is filed, we send out a full information sheet with them. And then also they attend those hearings. So you'll have you'll not only have somebody from the Salvation Army or KCCA, or you'll also have legal aid at all those hearings. So they can have a breakout room, with resources right then and be connected if they need to.
Okay, great. Cool. Thank you for all of that. Any other questions? If not, thank you for your report this morning, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. It's court morning this morning, so we are now going to move to Avery Rose Probate Court for performance measurement review.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Nice to see everyone in person this year. First of all, my name is Avery Rose. I'm the probate register at the probate court. I started back in November of 2019, and 4 months later, COVID started. And I had Judge Murkowski here earlier. He had to go attend some hearings or go conduct some hearings this morning, so he cannot be with us right now, but he wanted to offer his support as well. First of all, I'd like to echo what Matt said in thanking you all for your guidance, your support, and your help in this last year. We have all struggled through this pandemic together, and there have been decisions that we've had to make that have required collaboration. And for instance, every week we meet with the health department and with Mr. Fortman, who's actually here with us today, to look at our gating measures and going into the next phases. Those meetings, those contacts are extremely crucial for the court, and we greatly appreciate your assistance and your help with that. I'd also like to note that we have really great partnerships with our courts here. The 63rd District Court and the 17th Circuit Court are great partners, and we try to work together as courts in this county. So the first thing I'd like to go over is the probate court. Our jurisdiction is over deceased estates, trust matters, civil actions, guardianships, conservatorships, petitions for mental health treatment, and drain appeals. We also handle election returns on election night. We had a couple of late nights this year. So the probate court is actually tasked with taking in the official results from the election. Usually when people come to the probate court, they're having either the worst day of their life or the worst week of their life. They've lost somebody. They've, perhaps a family member or a friend has become incapacitated and they need help for that individual. So we take pride in being kind of the first line there for people to provide assistance to them and to provide help where it's needed. This morning, I'm going to be talking about our alignment with board priorities, our strategic goals, our performance metrics, and significant accomplishments as well. So I'd like to start off with our mission statement, which is to secure the sound and efficient resolution of matters within an accessible and person-centered venue where every individual is treated with dignity and respect. Our staff in 2020 banded together through a number of challenges, which I'll get into a little bit further. But we have tried every day to meet this high standard of our mission and treat everyone with dignity and respect who comes to the court to seek assistance. There are four main strategic goals that the court has identified. The first is timely handling and adjudicating matters before the court, maximizing technology to increase the efficiency of probate staff, collecting reimbursable fees, and also facilitating the provision of public guardians or guardians for those in need. So let's dive into the first performance measure. Last year, the court did see a dip in its caseload, as you can see in the chart before you. We had 6,400 new filings in 2020, which was approximately 90% of the court's 3-year average in new filings. New filings decreased across the state overall last year. The State Court Administrative Office has indicated that it's not going to be releasing the 2020 caseload numbers for all of the courts because it was kind of an anomaly year. We do think, though, that in reviewing our numbers for 2021 so far, that we are going to be on track to meeting or exceeding the level of new cases we had in 2019. And you can see on the graph there in front of you, 2019 was a watershed year for the court. And the fact that we may actually have the same number of filings in 2021 is significant because we no longer handle minor guardianships in probate court. Those cases were transferred to the circuit court at the start of last year. Between 2011 and 2020, I also wanted to note that filings have increased by 23%, and that number is likely to continue. We have an aging population in Kent County and across the nation, really, and so the need for guardianship is going to continue. And we've also seen an increase in the number of mental health inquiries and filings, even if that's not reflected in the caseload numbers. We see that that is another challenge for our area. Furthermore, I'm pleased to say that the court continues to meet a majority of time guidelines for guardianship, conservatorship, and mental health matters, and we do so while handling nearly 2,000 out-of-county mental health cases, which the court has done for the last 3 years. Every year, the court submits a SCAO 22 report, which is our caseload and disposition rates for the court. And last year, the court exceeded a majority of the disposition guidelines in every case type category. Thank you. Next, I'd like to talk about maximizing the effectiveness of probate court staff through innovative technology. And the objective here is training and equipping staff members so they're able to provide excellent customer service. The slide you have before you shows the average number of hearings for which probate staff prepared files on an annual basis. I would note that between June 2020 and April of 2021, the court had 10 vacancies, including 4 retirements. And in 2020, we had at least 1 vacancy for a total of 9 months. So while we were dealing with, all of the changes that were being implemented, we had a lot of changes in our personnel as well. And I will say our staff banded together. They cross-trained. They absorbed the duties that needed to be done, and we were able to get our work done. We were able to continue the work of the court. I'd also like to thank the county. Every time we made a request to fill a position, they allowed us to do so, even during the moratorium, and they allowed us to do so without a delay. So we greatly appreciate their assistance in that regard. Last year, Judge Murkowski held about 2,200 hearings, which is approximately 90% of his average number of hearings that he typically holds in a year. I do hearings 3 days a week, and I held a little over 800, which is probably about 87% of my normal as well. In a year in which the clerk's office had retirements, employees on leave, and employees working remotely, our staff prepared an average of 214 files for hearings per full-time employee, which I think is fairly excellent. The next slide will show the average number of new filings processed for full-time employee in the probate court. Last year, probate court staff handled 448 new filings per full-time employee. Although time for training is limited, the court is trying to make it a priority. In March of this year, we started holding monthly staff meetings, which were never a thing in the probate court office, surprisingly. So we've started having monthly staff meetings to provide training, to provide communication, and that's been instrumental, I think, for the court. Currently, and I just looked at this the other day, 75% of our staff are in a position that they've never had in the last 5 years. I mean, so in 5 years, we've got like 3/4 of our staff that are brand new in their position, which is striking. And as people will say, when you start working in a lot of settings, but for probate, I mean, you really know probate after maybe 3 years. I mean, it takes you at least a couple of years to really know the ropes, know the case types, know the forms and things like that. And we are constantly in a training mode to try to get people up to speed. So some other things that we did to try to help staff is in October of 2020, the court obtained laptops and docking stations to help staff work remotely. And November 2020, the court began using a Google Docs spreadsheet for appointing GALs. So whenever there's a new guardianship case, the court appoints what's called a guardian ad litem, and we refer to them as a GAL. The Google Sheet is editable by all of our staff, and it's viewable by our GALs. And we took something that used to be a paper folder that would sometimes get lost, and could only be held by one person at a time to something that is accessible and viewable by all of the people who need to see it. And that's helped people work remotely, and it's definitely made the court more efficient. We're looking at a number of other ways to improve our efficiency with the court and provide tools to staff, including credit card payments, the expanded use of imaging and scanning of files, and e-filing as well. And if you wouldn't mind going back one slide, Angie, I wanted to just show you all this. This is actually a picture of the docket calendar that the court used to use on the left side of your screen, and the new process that we're using for scheduling hearings. So we used to have this calendar on our wall. When someone would come to the probate counter, they'd ask for a hearing date, and one of our clerks would kind of, get up from their desk, walk a few paces, look at the wall, and say, "It looks like there's an orange dot on November 13th, you can have that date." And what we were seeing was, we'd have, our judge would have hearings, maybe 17 on one of his call dates, and then he would have 4 on the next call date. The sticker, maybe someone forgot to put a sticker on the calendar, and, there were all kinds of efficiency issues with that. So we decided back in February of last year to create an Outlook calendar to designate the number of slots that were available and to make it, again, accessible by everyone. And fortunately, we did that before March, and we had that up and running, and we were able to kind of scale back hearings as we had to when we shifted to doing hearings by Zoom. So the next performance measure that I'd like to talk about is collecting legal fees, and we appoint attorneys for respondents in mental health matters and also for contested legally incapacitated guardianship cases as well. We appoint attorneys in developmentally disabled guardianship cases. And the court seeks reimbursement on those fees that we pay attorneys for their work. Last year, you can see there was quite a dip in the number of fees that we collected. We collected only about 16.6% of our fees. Already this year, I'm pleased to say that we're on track. Again, we've collected about 40% of our legal fees expended. The last performance measure, and kind of shifting gears to the guardianship program, is the recruitment and training of new professional guardians to meet the growing demand of guardianship services. I'll tell you that recruiting and retaining guardians during the pandemic has been extremely difficult. And being a guardian is a tough job. It's a tough job for a number of reasons, but it's been made tougher in the last year with Social Security office being closed, other offices being closed. Guardians are having a hard time getting their work accomplished. And in a lot of these cases, there's a tight turnaround for, signing someone up for benefits, for instance. You try to, enroll somebody in Medicaid or Medicare. It's taking time. And you get us, when the court appoints a guardian or a conservator, we issue what's called letters of conservatorship, letters of guardianship. And guardians were like getting one copy and they'd send it into Social Security and it'd be lost for, 6 weeks or something like that. So it made their lives very difficult. We are continuing to recruit guardians though, and we're trying to find people who are willing to do this kind of work. As difficult as it is, it's a rewarding job, and there's a chance to really help people in need. One shout out that I would like to give to the county is with an incentive that they've helped us provide guardians during this period of time. Guardians, again, I mean, with all of the difficulties with picking up a new case, some guardians were reluctant to take on new cases, and the county was willing to offer an incentive for new cases that guardians are picking up, and we've seen that has really helped. There's an average waiting period of about 6 days for a guardian to be assigned to an indigent individual. In 2020, the program added 11 new guardian trainees. 4 of them stayed on, and that's, I think, just emblematic of the difficulty of the job, frankly. So currently the guardianship program has 38 public guardians and they handle about 577 indigent cases. The next slide should show you the demand for public guardianship services in Kent County. We've seen a 51% increase in cases covered by the program since 2016. On average, as you can see in 2016, we were handling on average 383 indigent cases per month. In the first quarter of 2021, we're up to 577 cases per month. I do want to share one quick story with you regarding a case that our public guardian took up. We had an elderly woman who had fallen in a parking lot last year at kind of a seedy motel. Passerby called an ambulance. APS got involved and did some checking. The individual had dementia, and she, as we found out, had been slowly alienated from her family by her own granddaughter. Her granddaughter slowly started telling family members she didn't want to meet with them, she didn't want to talk to them, and completely isolated her grandmother. She ended up taking her grandmother's money. She bought a really nice house on a mountain in Costa Rica and flew her grandmother back here with no provisions, essentially. And that's where APS got involved. Our public guardian stepped in. She was able to secure funding for the individual, housing for this individual, and she was able to reconnect her with her family members who this person thought didn't want to talk to her because that's what her granddaughter told her. And she was able to develop relationships with her family, including her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, before she ultimately passed away. Another quick case of a gentleman who was again at a motel where there's typically a lot of drug transactions and other unsavory activities going on. He had been kind of homeless. He didn't know anything about his past. And the public guardian was only able to get a few tidbits of information out of him. He apparently had some kind of a health episode that sort of blanked his memory. But with the information she obtained from him, she was able to find out that he was actually a retired teacher and a multi-millionaire who had investments, and he's now living very comfortably and is reconnected with his family here. So we think that the guardianship program is a significant program. It's beneficial to residents in Kent County, and it continues to benefit people every day. And we're thankful for the leadership of those who came together and helped develop this program in the first place. Next, I'd just like to briefly talk about our significant accomplishments last year. I talked to you about this at my last performance measures review. We got a Polycomp from the State Court Administrative Office, which was installed back in September of last year. It did not require any county funds. The State Court Administrative Office offered to install it for us, and they are going to update that on a scheduled basis, I believe. And it's significant because the Polycom has allowed and will allow the court to conduct hybrid proceedings, much like what you're doing here today, by Zoom and in person. So we're thankful for that. In November of last year, we also hired a new probate supervisor, Amy Corey, who was previously a judicial clerk for Judge Murkowski. Ms. Corey began working for the court under Judge Haynes, and she's been an incredible asset to our team. I'd like to talk about briefly our COVID response. So we closed our front counter shortly after the pandemic began in earnest here in March of last year. That was reopened back on June 14th. And during the time in which our counter was closed, and we've continued this, we've accepted filings by Dropbox and by email. We have a proxy email address for emergencies to be filed. We've conducted all hearings by Zoom and streamed those on YouTube for individuals to view proceedings. We've also offered new guardianship conservatorship trainings on Zoom. There's a sign up on our website that will allow participants to register. We usually have between 10 and 20 new, just members of the public who want to learn how to be a guardian conservator who join. And as of yesterday, we are now in phase 4 of our reopening, 4 of 4, and the state court administrator, Tom Boyd, essentially said, we're back. So we were in phase 2, and now pursuant to the scale order, we're in phase 4. Looking ahead, we'd like to expand our use of document imaging through OnBase. We'd like to begin accepting credit card payments through Access Kent, and perhaps expand our use of TurboCourt for e-filing options as well. I'd like to thank you all again for your time today. I apologize I took so much of your time this morning. Do you have any questions for me?
All right, thank you, Avery. Let's see if we have any questions from board members. Yes, Commissioner Hennessy. You can't use the word guardianship, though.
I found your report to be interesting in the, and you've addressed this a lot this morning in terms of, offering more technology in how you do your business to make it, user-friendly too. I did go to your website and saw many of the forms that you're talking about, including Judge Murkowski's docket for today, which is really very busy.
Yes.
It was very busy. So what I did have one thought, and we fund guardianship through the senior millage, so we do trust the way in which you're providing these services and want to offer support. The Area Agency on Aging, through its caregiver Zoom sessions, did one on guardianship and talked about guardianship conservativeship. And I may be saying that wrong. Anyhow, they talked about these. They talked about the local resources. And I noticed on some of your forms that you do mention the differences between them and some other ways to approach it. But that's when as I was reading your report, I'm going, wonder if you had a little Zoom thing or a little video on your site, maybe in English and Spanish, that would describe and help people use local resources and to know the differences between the options that are available, because guardianship is really such a, life, it's a real life decision. You don't have very
Yes.
many choices left in your life once you're under the guardianship. So, you know, I was impressed with your Access Kent website and the forms that were available on it.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. And I think that's a great idea. I've thought about adding videos. It's easy enough to record these days, and that's something we should look into. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other, yes, Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions. One, when you talked about the increase in the number of cases and you have one judge, are you concerned or do you see the need in the near future for a second judge, or are you going to be able to handle this for a long time with one?
I think we are nearing the point, or at the point already perhaps, when an additional judge is needed for the probate court. We recently ran the numbers. There's I forget what it's called, but there are case weights. There's a case weight measure that SCAO uses to determine whether you need another judge. It's called secondary analysis. And we actually ran those numbers earlier this year, and Judge Murkowski, I think, is at upwards of 1.7 judges. That doesn't include the work that Judge Ackert is performing he handles a mental health docket for half a day as well. So I think if you include both of those together, I believe we're over the 2 judge mark at this point.
What is that acronym that you're using? SCAO?
SCAO, I'm sorry, it's the State Court Administrative Office, and it's the administrative arm of the Supreme Court. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
We throw out all these little, use our lingo, and I don't adequately explain that, so.
Another quick question on the reimbursement. Are you
Yeah.
getting reimbursed by the state for
We're
those?
getting-
Where's the money coming from?
We're getting reimbursed by the respondents themselves. So we send a bill to someone who was appointed an attorney in an mental health case or in a guardianship case and ask them to reimburse the court. If they send the court a fee waiver, that fee is waived. It's a discretionary, it's essentially a discretionary expense on the part of the payer.
Okay, so you have
But
a
we-
40%, you're collecting 40%. Do you have a goal for what you're trying to?
We're trying to get 30%, and last year we obviously did not come close to that, so, yes.
Okay, and then my big question is, I know that there's been a lot of scandals lately about guardians, exploitative guardians.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm wondering, has that touched your court? Is that something you feel like you need safeguards? Or, I mean, I know there's some state legislation brewing about this right now. How is this affecting our probate court?
I haven't heard of any scandals per se in our area. There are always bad actors in every field. And I will say this, there's been a big push to use DPOAs or powers of attorney as opposed to guardianship. And powers of attorney have their place, and they are good, and they're useful in some scenarios. But if your goal is to protect the individuals who need to be protected, wouldn't it be better to have a court which is supervising a case and looking at an annual report every year and conducting a guardianship review every 3 years, as opposed to someone who just, it's the Wild West, you have your documents? To me, it seems like you could exploit someone much easier by using something outside of the court system. And there has been a push to limit guardianship and limit the parameters of the orders that the court is ordering. And Judge Murkowski is ordering a lot of limited guardianships with very precise authority for the guardian for that purpose, to ensure that they have as much independence and authority on their own as possible. So, I don't know, does that answer your question?
That's a very helpful answer, yeah. I mean, I haven't heard of anything locally, but you read about the stories, and I'm sure that's why it's gotten attention at the state level. I'm just curious about.
Yes.
No, that's very helpful, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Any other questions, comments? Oh, Commissioner LeCloud online.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for the report. It was very enlightening, and just to see how much work is being done at the probate court level with so many new staff. I had a couple questions for you. So you had mentioned that 3/4 of the staff are pretty much new. I just wanted to just ask, how is that impacting, I guess, the service that's being provided to those that are coming into the court for services? Like, is there a delay, I guess, in reacting to and you know the needs of the people that are coming to the court, because there's such a new staff, a new level of staff that are there? And is that causing any issues, I guess, because the staff are so new?
I'm not aware of any systemic issues that's causing at this point. I think certainly having veterans who know what they're doing and have been doing it for many years is better than having new people who don't. And I can tell you, as someone who helps manage, you get questions all day. People ask you questions about cases, and that's part of my job, is to provide direction and provide support and guidance to the new staff. We have an excellent probate supervisor. Again, she's been with the court for over 20 years, and having her in place has been very instrumental too, for providing that guidance to folks. I don't believe we have any delays. I haven't heard of any delays at the court. We're getting our work done, but it hopefully means that there's quality too in the service that's been provided. Again, I haven't heard of any failure or lack of quality, and if you know of any, I would appreciate knowing that, so we can fix it.
Okay. No, I haven't heard of anything. I just wondered, because that's a really high level of new staff to be, trying to work through as many cases and hearings as you all are. And I wondered as well, in your report, you had mentioned that, the filings per staff member are pretty high from what it just looked like. But is there a benchmark for, what the norm would be for an average, staff member to be handling a certain number of filings? Like, what's the benchmark? What's the norm?
I don't know that there is a statewide benchmark. I think the probate court here has always done, our staff have always outperformed. They've always performed highly. I'll tell you this, we are in the midst of a job study at the probate court office, and the official results haven't been released yet, but just in reviewing, comparing us to our comparables, other counties of similar size and caseload, our court is handling about 75% more per staff member than other courts, which is striking. It's a striking number. And we've been doing that. We've been doing that for many years. It's not a new thing. But I think a lot of it has to do with just the efficiencies that some of my predecessors put in place to try to keep the boat going, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. And my last question was in terms of the number of public guardians per, in comparison to the number of cases. You mentioned that there were 38 public guardians and over 550 or so cases that they were overseeing. That seems like a really high number to me. Again, I'm just wondering what the norm is, or is there a norm for the state, for the county in normal times, or is that extremely high?
I would say it is higher than probably, it's hard to say. I don't know what the state numbers look like across, especially like on the east side of the state. Some of them do have higher caseloads than others. The benchmark is kind of 20, for a professional guardian working full time to have 20 cases. And I don't with me have the number of cases per professional guardian. But guardians have the ability to take new cases. It's up to them. So when we refer a case out, our guardian monitor sends new cases three days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And it's up to the public guardians to take a new case if that's their choice. So we're not forcing any cases on anybody. They work as independent contractors, and they determine, yes, I'm willing to take this case. Does that answer your
Great.
question? Or?
That does. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. I'm all set.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Avery, I do have one. In your report, there's an indication that on mental commitments, you have, is it 1,800 in 2020 are from non-county residents, and the total number is 2,295. I assume that 2,295, 1,800 of those are out of county?
The number is actually a little higher. I believe that, let me just make sure I have my numbers correct here. So we had our own mental health matters, we had 1,900, so 1,967. Of other county mental health cases, we had 1,822.
Okay. Well,
For
that's
almost 4,000, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little better ratio. I thought maybe 70% of all of them were from out of county, but it's a significant number of out of
is.
county. And I assume it's because we have the facilities and the institutions here that generally produce these requests. And I think maybe we've talked about this last time, whether there's any conversation about equalizing that between counties, or does it break even? Are that many of our residents getting handled out of Kent County?
I would say that it depends on what facilities you have in your county determines the number of out-of-county mental health cases you handle. It used to be that judges kind of rode on a circuit to the hospitals maybe 1 day or 2 days a week. That's what we used to do. Then we got our Polycom, and now we have Zoom. The practice of courts entering what's called assignments through Scale to assign another court or another judge to hear your case because that person is in your county, that continues to this day. And that's why we're handling so many out-of-county cases, because other courts are saying, for instance, in Wayne County, our Wayne County resident is in Kent County at Pine Rest. And so we're going to let you handle that hearing for us. We'll prepare the paperwork. We'll send it to you ahead of time. But your judge is there already handling the docket with Pine Rest, and it's just more efficient. And frankly, if you look at it from the perspective of the hospitals, could you imagine if Pine Rest had 83 different Zoom meetings to set up, with the different counties? So that's partly what's driving that. It's just an efficiency thing for the whole system.
For the system?
Yes.
What's the amount of time per hearing? So put a handle on this 1,800 cases for non-residents. Are we spending 10 hours of staff time per case?
It really depends, Commissioner. Some of these cases end in what's called a deferral or a stipulation, where the respondent essentially says, "Okay, I know I need to be treated," and we proceed without a hearing. And those are a low time commitment, obviously. If the matter proceeds to a hearing, it could be 10 to 20 minutes, perhaps. It depends. Other times, folks will file a jury demand, and so then we're talking a lot more resources. And typically, mental health commitments are cases that are more apt to, have a jury demand filed in them.
So is there any conversation at Scale or elsewhere to equalize this across the state, or we're just a victim of our own success?
There hasn't, not to my knowledge, there hasn't been any talk of that. They've talked, Scale has talked kind of broadly, future planning and way in the future about having kind of judges who are experts, handle cases. So you're the expert of trust cases. So the really difficult trust cases in the state go to you, and we just do assignments in that fashion. I don't know that will pick up any steam, or really should pick up steam, but no. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll continue to monitor that. But all right. Otherwise, thank you so much. Thank Judge Murkowski for being here this morning as well for us.
Absolutely.
We appreciate your report.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Let's move to the next item on our agenda, item number 6. And will you present this one for us, Wayman?
Sure. This is a request or recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to appoint Chair Mandy Bolter to the Grand Rapids Kent County Convention Arena Authority to fill an unexpired four-year term ending December 31, 2022. The Kent County Board of Commissioners appoints two members of the Convention Arena Authority Board to fill four-year terms that begin on January 1 and end on December 31. One of the two county-appointed positions will be vacant as of July 1, 2021. It is recommended that the Board of Commissioners appoint Chair Mandy Bolter to fill the remainder of the four-year term, which ends on December 31, 2022.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, it's moved and supported. Questions?
There were a lot of dates given on this.
Commissioner Hennessy, yes, sorry.
There were a lot of dates given. So this term will end on December 31st, 2022. Yeah, okay, it won't go to 2025, it won't. end
I think it's a midterm, there's 2 years left approximately on this. Yeah.
And who is our, refresh my memory, who is our other appointed person?
I think
County
Rick
appointed
Wynn is our
person?
other
Rick Wynn.
designated.
Rick Wynn, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? If not, all those that support the motion say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
Yes.
Say no. It is approved. Thank you. All right, next item is miscellaneous. Does any member have a miscellaneous item? Commissioner Hennessy?
I was just looking at you, Chair Steck, to see if you were going to sort of refresh our memories on the next 2 days and the meetings that are coming up.
Refresh your memories. Yeah, so it's a busy, happy to do so. It's a busy time coming up here with respect to the interview process, I assume you're talking about. And so we will see tomorrow, the search committee will be engaged in another round of interviews with our three finalists, and that will start at 8 o'clock, I believe it is. And we'll go for a number of hours. Then there is a luncheon at 11:30, let's say it is, 11:30-ish, 45, at the University Club. And then there is the public presentation, which will be at the Franklin campus of DHS. And that starts at 5:30, 5:45, is it? 5:30. So I encourage all of you to participate. I think these will also be available online. They're also going to be broadcast, so you can tap into them, but certainly three opportunities to educate yourself as much as possible. You'll have the opportunity again, once the meeting on Thursday morning, we will have the three candidates presenting to the full board, and you'll be able to inquire or ask questions at that time as well. It is anticipated that we would be making a decision as a board on Thursday. Did I cover it? Good. I see a lot of Carol. There's been a lot of work on that committee, so. All right, anything else? That was going to be my miscellaneous comment as well, so thank you for preempting me. And if there is nothing else, we stand adjourned.
I am Kent County. I am Kent County.
I am Kent County.
We are 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 Kent County.
Bayard, Kent County. Ami, Kent County.
Somos Kent County.
Mas Ira, Kent County.
We are Kent County. We are Kent County. We are Kent County. Oh, yeah.